The story begins in a noble's mansion where a blind boy named Kunan is surrounded by his loved ones, all of whom have sympathetic looks on their faces. Everyone has always told him that his eyes weren't capable of seeing, so apparently Kunan became blind because his eyes bear the hero's scar, a mark left by the famous knight Hister Hulia. Having such a scar isn't ordinary, his father tells him so. Later that day, his magic teacher arrives, and a maid walks him over to the study room. On the way, Kunan asks the maid whether it's even necessary for him to learn magic at all. The maid tells him that it would be a waste of his talent if he doesn't. He was born with a water crest, and being able to use magic is a huge skill, a mark of pride he should take seriously. Kunan, however, doesn't see the point. Even if he learns to use magic, he still won't be able to go anywhere without someone guiding him along the way. When they arrive at the study room, he is introduced to his magic teacher, Jenny, who says it will be an honor to teach him magic. Shortly after, they begin their lessons, and Kunan appears to be a natural. He successfully performs his first spell on the very first try, creating a ball of water. If he gets good enough at magic, he might even be able to create new eyeballs with his powers, which would allow him to see. His tutor, Flora, meets him to read a book and asks him what story he wants to hear today. Kunan answers that he wants to hear the story of the famous knight. As Flora narrates the story, Kunan learns that a long time ago, there was a war between the heroes of the world and the demon lord. Hister, the nation's hero, finally defeated the demon lord, but lost an arm and a leg in the process during a fierce battle. Since that war, every now and then, descendants of hero are born missing something, like a limb, their eyesight, or some other body part. People call these children the reincarnation of the hero or the hero's scar. He has firmly made up his mind that through the use of magic, he is going to learn how to master it properly and eventually create eyeballs for himself using magic. He realizes that in order to keep using magic for long periods, he needs to strengthen his physical body as well. Aiko suggests that he begin sword practice to build muscle and endurance, and also increase his food intake to support his growing body. Kunan begins his training under one of the best retired swordsmen in the country, Master Yuoro. Although the training is difficult and exhausting, Kunan is clearly making steady progress little by little. Eventually, it becomes time for his magic lesson, so Jenny arrives at the training area, and Master Yuoro steps away to give them space. Jenny walks up to Kunan and tells him that she is impressed to see that he has started sword fighting practice as well. Jenny asks Kunan to repeat the spell they practiced during the last lesson. Previously, Kunan was only able to cast a single ball of water, but now he easily creates 6 or even 7 water balls at the same time. Jenny finds this completely unbelievable. Meanwhile, Princess Mirika, Kunan's fiancée, is scheduled to visit him that afternoon. She feels hesitant about the meeting because Kunan has always been far too gloomy for her liking. She understands that this political marriage is her duty as royalty, but she struggles to imagine spending the rest of her life with someone who feels so distant. However, when she arrives at the mansion, she immediately notices that something is different. Kunan has a new energy about him, and he even holds an engaging conversation with her. He shows her the water magic he has been practicing, and she finds it genuinely interesting. They end up spending the entire day together having a wonderful time. On the carriage ride back home, Mirika blushes as she thinks about him and finds herself eagerly waiting for the next time they meet. The next day during training, she suggests breaking water magic down into separate steps, such as producing the water, making it float, and maintaining the ball's shape. To demonstrate, she creates 2 water balls, one hot and one cold, and so he pours some water into a cup using his magic. He then hands the cup to Aiko and asks her to taste it. After taking a sip, Aiko pauses for a moment before saying that the water strangely tastes like apples. Jenny tries her best not to show it on her face, but she is clearly irritated and frustrated that Kunan is once again mastering a skill almost immediately after she introduces it to him. The next morning during breakfast, Kunan attempts his magic once again by forming a ball of water. As he carefully moves the floating water ball over the apples on the table, he suddenly stands up in shock. Aiko quickly asks him what happened, and Kunan excitedly explains that through his magic, he is now able to see colors. At first, Aiko doesn't believe him and thinks he might be imagining things, but Kunan proves it by confidently stating that there are 2 green apples and 3 red apples in the bowl. When she checks and realizes he is correct, she becomes overwhelmed with joy and gives him a tight hug to celebrate. Aiko immediately reports this incredible development to Kunan's father, explaining that Kunan can now use magic to see colors. Kunan's father is thrilled upon hearing this news and feels deeply proud that his son is making such real and meaningful progress. The following day, Kunan attempts to surprise Jenny before she arrives by creating a massive red ball of water using his magic. However, just as he is concentrating, the rest of his family suddenly shows up, startling him badly. He loses his composure, causing the red water to burst and splash everywhere, completely covering both him and Aiko. Kunan ends up looking as though he is drenched in blood, which causes his mother to panic in terror and faint on the spot. Kunan has no idea why his mom just fainted, so Aiko explains that blood is red in color, so his mom just got a little spooked out. Kunan's father immediately scolds him for frightening his mother and punishes him by cutting off his allowance for 2 months. As for Aiko, he announces that her pay will be cut for 3 months. Since Aiko is entirely motivated by money, she faints the moment she hears this punishment. A few days later, Kunan's father tells his older brother that he wants to send him to a school. Surprised, Ikshyo points out that his brother has never seen the outside world. Gurion agrees, saying that he wants him to ensure his little brother can adjust well in the real world. He assures his dad that he'll do his best for his brother. Arrive at the main estate, where the head butler, Balin, greets them. Then, Kunan's brother comes over and starts leading him and Aiko towards his dad's chambers. As they walk together, Kunan's brother wonders if he needs his help to move around. Kunan shakes his head, reminding him that he can sense his surroundings pretty well now. His brother nods, still feeling uneasy from the last time he took care of his brother. Soon, they enter a room where both of Kunan's parents are waiting for them. After Kunan and his brother go in, Aiko and Balan remain outside the room. Then, Gurion asks Kunan if he's interested in going to a real school. Kunan refuses, saying that he doesn't want to trouble others to take care of him all the time. So he calms down. He then explains to Kunan that he needs to go to school for Mirika's sake. He reminds Kunan that any noble who doesn't fulfill their duty is shunned by society, so Mirika would get harassed by everyone if she were to marry an illiterate boy. Hearing this, Kunan reconsiders his decision and agrees to go to school. The next day, Kunan tells Mirika that he's going to school. She smiles, happy to spend more time with her fiancé. Kunan admits that he's a bit scared of the new environment, so she promises to take good care of him. Kunan thanks her for the help, but thinks that they'll get into trouble with her jealous admirers. Mirika hesitates and acts like it won't be a problem, so Kunan wonders if she isn't popular at school. She quickly shakes her head, proudly admitting that 5 boys have expressed their interest in her. Kunan sighs, realizing that he needs to prepare himself to deal with some jealous teenagers. Later, he dresses up in his uniform to go to school. As Kunan heads out of the house they arrive outside the school's building, where Kunan steps out of the carriage. Mirika rushes over to greet her fiancé, who starts rambling on about how pretty she is. Mirika smiles and returns his banter, leaving Ikshyo completely baffled. Mirika then turns around to lead Kunan inside, but he remains standing in his spot. While Mirika feels confused, Kunan pays attention to all the voices he's hearing from inside the building. Although he feels some pressure in facing so many people, this time, he feels confident that he can handle it. Once he's mentally prepared, Kunan reaches his hand out to Mirika. He asks her to escort him like a delicate girl, so she smiles and agrees. Meanwhile, in another part of the school, Kunan's special teacher, Cast, wonders why her new student hasn't arrived yet. Knowing that Kunan is the son of a marquess, she starts to question whether a teacher as inexperienced as herself is truly capable of instructing him. Cast then hears some girls around her gushing over a handsome new student. While she watches in shock, Kunan walks away with his fiancée. Cast quickly regains her bearings and catches up and introduces herself as his new teacher. Kunan returns her greeting like a girl, explaining that he's playing the part of a delicate lady. This completely stuns Cast, where Kunan heads to the cafeteria to have lunch with Mirika. Suddenly, Prince Lyle and his group stop them. Lyle calls out to his sister, prompting her to nervously fuss with her clothes. Kunan wonders who stalked her and steps forward to confront Lyle. Behind them, Ikshyo walks over, shocked to see a noble family member harassing his brother. Meanwhile, Lyle insults Kunan for getting engaged to his sister despite his disability. Although Mirika feels upset, she feels powerless to speak up against her elder brother. Kunan senses her discomfort, so he gets ready to punish Lyle. Before he can move, Ikshyo steps in to mediate the situation. Unfortunately, Lyle gets angry and orders him to get out of the way. While Ikshyo feels trapped, Kunan quietly uses his water spell to gather water from his surroundings. He then directs all of it toward Lyle's pants, making it look like he peed himself. Kunan then innocently points out that the prince has a wet spot on his pants, which shocks everyone. Lyle gets embarrassed and claims that he didn't do it, but he quickly leaves the area to clean himself up. After he leaves, Ikshyo immediately realizes that Kunan played a prank on the prince. He asks his brother if he's the one who messed with Lyle, but Kunan acts like he doesn't know anything. Before long, time passes quickly, and the day of Kunan's final exam arrives. Before heading out, he squeezes in one last short training session with Jenny. During the session, Kunan creates a bowl of water, and then smoothly transforms it into a solid ball of ice, shaped and sized like an apple. Seeing this, Jenny is genuinely impressed and comments on how far Kunan has come in such a short period of time. Later that afternoon, Kunan arrives at the academy and prepares himself for the final exam. He looks around at his surroundings and feels a bit excited, as the place truly looks and feels like a real school now. Professor Cast approaches him and wishes him good luck, though she adds that Kunan probably won't need it given how skilled he's become. Shortly after that, several other students gather around and ask Mirika to introduce her fiancé to them. With that cue, Kunan formally introduces himself as Mirika's fiancé and Ikshyo's little brother. He puts on a polite and charming demeanor, greeting them and saying that it's lovely to meet everyone. After After seeing his behavior and hearing the way he speaks, the other students immediately form the impression that Kunan is a perfect gentleman. Everyone takes their seats and the final exam begins. It doesn't take much time before the exams are graded, and Professor Cass stands before the entire class to announce the results. She turns toward the board and draws a flower on it, signaling that the students have passed. The classroom erupts into cheers as the students congratulate one another on successfully passing their final exam. With the final exam completed, Kunan departs in his carriage while waving and bidding everyone farewell, saying that he hopes they'll cross paths again someday. When Kunan arrives back at the mansion, he immediately resumes his training with Jenny. She asks him to create a ball of water and then split it into 10 separate pieces. Kunan does exactly as instructed, but then he tells Jenny that he's been working on a small trick of his own. To demonstrate, he transforms one of the water balls into a bird, which flaps its wings and flies away. Jenny is left completely speechless by what she just witnessed. After a moment, she drops to her knees, realizing that there's almost nothing left that she can teach him anymore. Shortly afterward, the two of them sit down to enjoy some tea together. It's then that Jenny finally decides to be honest and tells Kunan the truth that she truly has nothing more to teach him. She explains that he has already mastered elementary magic. He says she finds it unbearable to keep receiving such generous pay when she no longer has a proper role to fulfill as his teacher. Jenny then walks over to Kunan and places her hands on his shoulders, looking straight at him as she tells him that she has truly reached her limit and doesn't have anything more she can teach him. Kunan immediately refuses to accept that. He tells her that he wants her to keep coming up with those small exercises, even if they're nothing more than tricks meant to deceive him. He says he doesn't mind being deceived at all if it means he can continue getting stronger. But Jenny simply looks Kunan directly in the eyes and firmly tells him that she can't do it anymore. After saying that, she turns around and takes her leave. As she walks back home, she reflects on all the incredible things Kunan has accomplished so far and starts to believe that he might truly have what it takes to become the cerulean sorcerer. That thought suddenly sparks a burst of motivation within her. She tells herself that if Kunan can do it, then so can she. She refuses to lose to her own student and realizes that it's still not too late for her to push herself further. Show suddenly recalls rumors about an extraordinary royal sorcerer who goes by the name Xianli. Kunan immediately says that he wants Xianli to be his new magic teacher. However, Arsene suddenly speaks up and shuts the idea down, telling them that it won't be happening because it's simply impossible to invite a royal sorcerer to teach here. Apparently, royal sorcerers are extremely high profile in this kingdom and answer only to the king or members of the royal family. On top of that, they rarely leave the castle, which makes getting into contact with them extremely difficult. Hearing this, Kunan comes up with an idea. He plans to accompany his father when he visits the castle, intentionally get lost during the visit, and when one of the royal sorcerers comes to help him, he'll somehow convince them to take him on as an apprentice. However, Arsene immediately shoots down the plan the moment he hears it. He tells Kunan that it's a really dumb idea with a success rate under 10% and says there's no way they'll go through with it, so Kunan should just forget about it. But after Kunan's mother gives Arsene the puppy dog eyes, he immediately changes his mind and says he'll talk to the king about it to see what he can do. A couple of days later, a grandmaster receives Kunan's formal request to be trained by a royal sorcerer. At first, the grandmaster doesn't seem impressed by the request at all and is just about to toss it aside. But then, upon seeing that the request came from Kunan Gurian, the bearer of the hero scar, the grandmaster pauses, clearly intrigued. Kunan demonstrates his abilities by creating a cat formed entirely from water. Arsene is immediately sold at the sight of the cute cat and wonders if it's truly 100% water. Kunan confirms, explaining that he still needs to perfect the artificial cat's movement pattern to make it act more natural. Watching his dad pet the cat, Kunan wonders if he has a soft spot for them. He suggests getting a pet cat for their household, but Arsene immediately gets defensive, saying that a cute cat would only distract him from his duties. Still, Kunan keeps pressing the matter, so Arsene acts like all the cats running around would make trouble for his blind son. Kunan reminds him that he can see very well with magic now, so Arsene finally reveals that he's not getting a cat because his wife is a dog person. Kunan understands his father's reservations, so he suggests keeping the cat outside the house to satisfy everyone's demands. Arsene thinks about it and decides it might be worth a shot. After a while, they reach the imperial palace, where Princess Raisha greets them. Kunan casually returns her greeting, so Arsene reminds him to be more polite with the princess. Realizing that she's his future sister-in-law, he greets the princess once more with more sincerity. She smiles and returns his greeting, thinking that Kunan seems just as amazing as Mirika described. Then, she notices the cat in Arsene's arms, prompting him to place it on the ground. However, before anything else can happen, Kunan dissolves it into water. While Raisha is surprised that the cat was a magical illusion, Arsene feels heartbroken that he lost his new pet before even giving it a name. This display of abilities makes Raisha reconsider her previous opinion, and she informs Arsene that she'll take him to the Black Tower. He nods and prepares to leave his son in her care, but wonders how Kunan will go back home. Kunan reassures Arsene that he can head home alone, so he nods and promises to send a carriage for him. Then, Kunan also reveals that he's planning to take Mirika on a date, surprising them with his boldness. Sometime later, Kunan enters Lord Londamond's quarters, where he greets the Grand Royal Sorcerer. Kunan nervously greets him, feeling incredible pressure from his mana. Londamond gets interested in Kunan's water crest and inspects his right shoulder. He finds out that the mark is a 2-star, which leaves Kunan confused. Londamond explains that every magician can use one of 7 elements: fire, water, earth, wind, light, dark, and foul. The ability of a magician to use an element is classified into 5 ranks, from 1 to 5 stars. Kunan realizes that he's still the second weakest rank when it comes to real sorcerers. Reisha also informs him that she's a 2-star wind mage, so he realizes that Londamond must be of a higher rank. Londamond wonders how Kunan can tell his rank, so he explains that he judged it from his immense magic pressure. Kunan makes a guess that Londamond is a 3-star, but he learns that the old man is actually an impressive 4-star mage. Londamond notes that Kunan isn't too impressed by his strength, so the Kunan explains he doesn't even know what his rank signifies yet. Then, he asks Londamond if a sorcerer's rank limits the kind of magic they can use. Londamond explains that a sorcerer's rank only determines the total amount of mana they have, not the kind of spells they can use. After his explanation, he wonders if Kunan is ready to focus all his energy on learning more magic. Kunan nods, so Londamond gets excited for the days ahead of them. Afterward, he takes the kid to a ground where they're surrounded by all the royal mages. Londamond asks Kunan to display some of his impressive magic abilities, so Reisha excitedly tells him that Kunan truly lives up to his hype. As Londamond feels jealous of her, the other royal mages also get interested in Kunan's abilities. Kunan realizes that he might be able to join their ranks if he passes Londamond's test, so he decides to get serious. Then, Londamond calls over a magician called Victo. Victo walks up and uses a water spell to create dozens of water balls around him. While Kunan is amazed by all the balls arranged in such a neat formation, Londamond wonders if he can steal Victo's balls away from him. This reminds Kunan of a lesson he had with Flora, when she explained that not only can he create new water from mana, but he can also control existing water. Still, Kunan feels nervous about tampering with water created by another magician. He focuses his mind and uses his water spell to manipulate Victo's balls, but the skilled royal magician resists Kunan's mana. Still, Kunan remains determined to keep pushing. After putting all his effort into pulling Victo's balls, he manages to steal 2 of them before Londamond ends his exam. In the end, Kunan feels shocked that he could only pull 2 balls, and realizes the depths of a royal sorcerer's true power. However, Londamond feels very impressed, and Victo also admits that he didn't think Kunan could steal a single one. Victo then asks Londamond if he can teach Kunan, but all of the other royal mages start screaming at him. Reisha reminds Victo that he recently broke up with his girlfriend, so an incompetent fool like him has no right to teach such a talented student. Watching all the royal mages argue to get Kunan, Londamond praises the young boy. Kunan wonders if he passed the exam, but Londamond asks him to entertain him a bit more. Soon, he starts bouncing on a water trampoline created with Kunan's genius methods. Watching their leader enjoy himself, the jealous royal mages ask him for a turn. Londamond turns a blind eye to all his students and instead asks Kunan how he created the water cushion. Kunan explains that he created the trampoline using special stretchy water, so Reisha wonders if he could create a soft mattress out of it as well. Finally, Londamond stops riding the water trampoline, and Kunan tells him that he could create one that could take him all the way to the 2nd floor in a single jump. Shocked, all of the royal mages ask to see his grand creation in action. However, Kunan refuses, explaining that he needs to visit Mirika for their date soon. Reisha then asks Kunan to make a water animals for her since he doesn't have the time for a bigger trampoline. She wonders if he can make artificial humans as well, so Kunan nods. He quickly makes a life-sized replica of his personal maid, whose realistic features surprise everyone. Since the maid puppet is created with water, the royal mages wonder if it can perform in human movements. Kunan admits that the first time he made his puppet fly, it wasn't a very pleasant experience. Still, the curious royal mages ask him to demonstrate, so he manipulates the maid puppet to fly around the palace. As the puppet floats around like a motionless ghost, the clueless palace staff gets terrified. After some time, they all find out the true culprits and give all the mages a proper chewing out. Afterward, all the royal mages start blaming each other for pushing Kunan. Kunan is staying back at the palace. Reisha reminds him that he has a date with Mirika soon. Shocked, he realizes that he completely lost track of time. Since he's getting late, Reisha offers to transport him quickly with the assistance of her wind magic. Together, the 2 of them get on a giant bubble created with Kunan's magic, and Reisha lifts them into the air and propels them forward using her wind. In just a short while, they reach their destination. However, Reisha flubs the landing and makes them free fall to the ground. Luckily, Kunan's soft bubble cushions the fall, which prevents them from turning into meat pancakes. Soon enough, Dario finds the 2 of them collapsed on the ground, knowing they pulled off yet another reckless stunt. Meanwhile, Mirika fusses over which clothes to wear on her date with Kunan. Watching her so flustered over a boy, her maid wonders what kind of man Kunan is to make her lady's heart swoon. Meanwhile, Mirika paces back and forth in her room, anxious about her meeting with Kunan. Soon after, a few servants let the maid know that Kunan has come to the castle to escort their young lady. The maid goes to relay the message to Mirika, and the moment she hears that Kunan has arrived. Mirika immediately hurries off to meet him without saying a single word. After she steps outside the castle, Kunan greets her with a polite bow and wishes that the night sky looks pretty on their date night. He then offers to escort her to their carriage, so Mirika shyly takes his hand. After a little while, they reach a restaurant, where Kunan and Mirika dine together. As the food arrives, Kunan offers a toast to his fiancée. Watching his gentlemanly behavior, Mirika's maid finally understands why her young lady adores him so much. Mirika asks Kunan about his experience at the Black Tower, so he reveals that all of the royal teachers treated him well. He also informs her that he passed the entrance test with flying colors and is expecting a suitable royal teacher to take him in. As Kunan goes on about his story, he sneaks in bits and pieces of sneaky compliments to Mirika as well. These compliments only keep rolling on as Kunan keeps going, making sure that Mirika never feels like she's getting sidelined. Watching nearby, Mirika's maid thinks that the young master's tastes are a bit strange, but she feels happy that her young lady likes him. Then, Kunan suddenly stops his frivolous jokes and gets serious. He apologizes to Mirika for only being able to give her a small dinner. However, Kunan declares that when they get married, he will make sure to spend every day with her as proof of his love. As Kunan's passionate declaration leaves even the maid flustered, Mirika looks forward to their future together. Although she acts dignified and composed at the restaurant, she throws a total girl fit after returning home. Meanwhile, in the Black Tower, Victo calls out to a professor in his room. After receiving no response, he walks up to the room and enters without permission. Victo calls out to Professor Xian inside the room, who gets upset that he interrupted his sleep. Victo tries to explain that he didn't want to disturb him anyway, but the Grand Master is calling for Xian's presence. Hearing that the chief sorcerer has called him, Xian calms down and gets serious. So Kunan explains that he got a guy called Xianli Fishroll. Hearing Xian's name, Aiko's eyes start glowing with excitement. Kunan also thinks it's a great opportunity to work with a talented guy, but Aiko has her sights set on Xian as his next wife. Surprised, Kunan wonders how she even knows him. So Aiko explains that Xian is a handsome man, most popular among women her age. She then asks her young master to put in a good word for her, but Kunan feels jealous about showing her off to another man. Unfortunately for him, Aiko cold-heartedly shrugs off his concerns and leaves to get dolled up for her fantasy man. Meanwhile, in Mirika's place, Reisha asks for her permission to leave the Black Tower. Mirika agrees to let her go out under the guise of using her protection, so Reisha heads out with her. As they walk together, Reisha's attention soon drifts off to Kunan. She feels upset that Xian got to be his teacher even though he didn't even appear during the test. Feeling his teacher's oppressive aura, Kunan instantly sobers up and grows quiet. As Xian stands there, menacingly, Aiko's heart races 1200 miles a minute while she tries to act all dignified. Meanwhile, Kunan observes how dense Xian's mana is and realizes that he might even be stronger than Landemont himself. Watching him stand there in silence, Mirika wonders if Kunan is okay. In reality, he continues internally fangirling over Xian. After realizing that everyone's watching him, Kunan apologizes for ignoring them and introduces himself to Xian. He then asks Xian if he can call him Professor Honey after the thick nature of his mana, but Xian coldly refuses. Kunan wonders what he should call his master, so Xian asks him to use his real name like a normal person. He also expresses his dislike towards Kunan's attitude and reveals that he's only here because he was forced to become his teacher. With him. So Dario realizes that he's about to cause trouble for him. First, Xian asks Kunan if he knows anything about compound spells. Kunan explains that normal magical spells are cast using circular mana molds. To create a compound spell, a magician must layer multiple magical circles over one another. Xian nods at his explanation and asks how many layers he has been able to create. Kunan shyly explains that he can only create 32 layered compound spells, thinking that the number is too low. However, Xian is surprised since he wasn't expecting him to be so proficient. He then reveals that he can create over 50 layered compound spells, which leaves Kunan completely impressed. Xian asks Kunan how he got over the first hurdle of 10 layers, so Kunan explains that he modified the spells on his own to bypass the bottleneck. Hearing this, Xian wonders how a kid can be talented enough to modify intricate magical spells like Play-Doh. He recalls his last discussion with Victo, who was incredibly jealous that he was getting Kunan as his student. Reisha had also confronted him in her rage, but Xian had no interest at the time since he was only following Landemont's orders. Seeing him in person, he finally realizes why all the teachers at the Black Tower were so interested in this kid. Instead of teasing Kunan further, he sincerely asks him to demonstrate his abilities. Kunan asks Xian to teach him the 50-layer spell first, but Xian tells him it's way out of his league at the moment. He tells the young boy to show him his best and begs him for his guidance, but Mirika thinks there's no way her fiancé would stoop so low. Just a second later, Kunan does exactly that and starts begging for Xian's guidance. He starts glazing his teacher and calls him every praise in the sun, thinking it's totally worth it if he gets to advance his magic. In the end, Xian gets creeped out by Kunan's shameless praises and tells him to quiet down. However, he gives in to Kunan's praise and decides to show off a bit of his abilities. Xian constructs a powerful earthen wall with his magic, challenging Kunan to break it as his first lesson. Kunan wonders how he can destroy such a powerful wall, so Xian tells him him to create a waterbed for him while he watches. Kunan creates the soft bed, which instantly captures Xion with its softness. After lying on the waterbed for a few minutes, Xion enjoys its softness so much that he falls asleep. Meanwhile, Kunan feels out the earthen wall to check for any weaknesses in its structure. As he senses the wall's composition, he notes how durable Xion's structure is. After focusing on the wall, he realizes that Xion has created it by layering over 40 defensive magic circles to strengthen its protection. Suddenly, Kunan turns around to Mirika and sits down for some tea. He asks her to wait for Xion since he's confident he can destroy the wall in an instant. After a while, Xion wakes up on the comfy bed and realizes he wasted too much time. Kunan informs him that he slept for a whole 2 hours, so Xion gets up to inspect his progress. Seeing the earthen wall unharmed, he thinks that Kunan has given up on destroying it. However, Kunan asks him for permission to destroy the wall, so Xion nods curiously. Soon, Kunan uses the water spell he used to clean Ikka's laundry, which surrounds the earth wall with bubbles. Kunan explains that even though the wall is tough, it's made out of a substance similar to dirt, which becomes fragile once it absorbs enough water. Xion wonders why he chose the washing spell to break it, so Kunan explains it's simply easier to clean up. After his explanation, Xion approves of Kunan's methods. He notes that even though Kunan specializes in a different water spell, he chose the perfect method for his situation. Kunan hears this praise and thinks he is finally worthy to be his student, but Xion warns him not to get ahead of himself. In the end, he formally accepts Kunan as his student. The next day, Xinon returns to Kunan's house with a smug face. Kunan happily greets his master, filled with respect for his incredible skill and teaching talent. Xinon warns Kunan that he won't hold back at all during their lessons, but Kunan reassures him that his body is ready. He requests his master to give him his hardest lessons, excited to practice the most complicated magical skills under the guidance of an expert wizard like him. However, a few hours later, Kunan simply ends up as a human printer, creating copies of magic techniques for his master. He asks Xinon if he's stopped loving him, but Xinon reminds him that he never loved him at all. He then reveals that the documents he's working on are state secrets, so nobody else is allowed to see them. After kicking everyone out of the room with this excuse, Xinon shyly asks Kunan to make him a water bubble mattress. As he happily snoozes away on the soft bed, Kunan gets to work on the documents. If he's finished with the work, Kunan responds that he's only halfway done, so Xinon mocks him for being so slow. Kunan refuses to take the unnecessary criticism and points out that Xenon's handwriting is hard to read because it looks like he dipped an earthworm in ink to write it. Xinon shamelessly refuses to take the blame, so Kunan tells him that he'll start charging money for his tedious work. Finally, Xinon reminds him that copying the magical texts is also a part of his training, so he should stop complaining. He reminds Kunan that if he kept reading spells from clean books, it would never help him retain the information as effectively as analyzing it and writing it down by himself. Hearing this, Kunan admits that Xinon is wise and thanks him for the lesson. Afterward, Xinon starts leaving for the Black Tower, so Kunan asks him about the strange diagram he saw. Xinon thinks about it for a bit before saying that he'll demonstrate in person during their next lesson. Since the next lesson will be at the Black Tower, Kunan feels happy that he'll get to see Mirika there again, but Xinon reminds him to stay focused. A few days later, Kunan visits the tower for his next lesson. There, all the other royal mages surround him, but Xinon proudly approaches them to assert his dominance. He reminds everyone that Kunan is his student and takes him away to a certain room. At once, all the sorcerers try to stop them, so Xinon orders Kunan to knock them out with his water mattresses. Once everyone is asleep on the fluffy beds, they head inside to begin their magic lesson. As Kunan and Xinon walk together, Xinon asks his student if he knows about magic tools. Kunan says that magic tools are devices operated using a sorcerer's power, so Xinon nods and adds that the creators of such tools are called magical engineers. After some walking, they enter Xenon's room, where Kuno finds a huge pile of his teacher's notes. He picks up some of the notes and instantly falls in love with the rich, magical knowledge contained within. Kunan asks Xenon for permission to live in his room, but Xenon tells him he'll get to use all of it without needing to live there anyway. He then picks up a box and gives it to Kunan, explaining that he's working on a magical tool that can prepare a cooked meal from the comfort of one's room. Xenon explains that although he's good at creating bigger shapes with his earth magic, the finer details of an advanced device are hard to perfect. Kunan wonders if he can create the softer parts with his water magic, so Xenon admits that he was planning on making him try it. He tells Kunan that he'll soon get to work with him on his prototypes, so Kunan feels excited for the future. Suddenly, Londamon bursts into the room to meet Kunan. Kunan respectfully returns the Grandmaster's greeting, after which Londamon asks if he would like to talk about magic together over lunch. Unfortunately for Londamon, Xenon is quite the jealous teacher, so he puts him to sleep with Kunan's waterbed. After that, Xenon goes back to discussing his magic tool with Kunan. A little while later, Kunan goes to the cafeteria to have some lunch during his break. While he chomps away at a sandwich, Victo asks him if he'd like to switch teachers. Kunan explains that although Xenon works him even harder than a slave, he is still an excellent teacher. While the other magicians get angry at this information, Kunan also tells them that his water magic synergizes well with Xenon's earth magic. He tries to praise his master even more, but Xenon stops him before before he can make him the enemy of all the royal mages. However, Kunan thinks that Zenon is just a shy tsundere, so he suggests showing off their close relationship even more. Finally, Zenon explains that Kunan is endangering his teacher's safety by making the other teachers jealous, so he stops glazing him. Kunan then turns to Reisha and asks her about Mirika's whereabouts. Reisha explains that Mirika is at the orientation ceremony for senior students in the Royal Academy, so she cannot meet him for now. Kunan realizes that Mirika has already progressed to her higher studies. Londamond asks him what he plans to do in the future, so Kunan considers taking his graduation exam as well. Londamond clarifies that he was talking about the magic school, where all the noble sorcerers come for learning. He tells Kunan that the magic school holds great opportunities for him, and Zenon asks his student to consider it well before switching schools. Kunan nods and carefully wonders if he wants to continue in the normal academy or switch to the magic school. 2 years later, after a lot of magic training, Kunan stands up against Zenon for his entrance exam. He creates a water circle using his magic. Zenon responds by creating a cluster of earth spikes and sends them forward to attack. In response, Kunan uses a 55-layer compound spell that combines layers of bubble magic, which creates a tsunami that wipes out all of the incoming earth spikes. After Kunan successfully defends his attack, Zenon smiles and praises him for passing the test. Afterward, everyone heads into the mansion to have lunch. Mirika cooks some waffles in Zenon's new magic tool, surprised by how convenient it is. Kunan explains that Zenon's recent tool has been quite the hit in the country, but all of the earnings go directly to his master. He wonders why Zenon still refuses to pay him for his contributions, so Zenon acts like he already did him a huge favor by letting him work on such an amazing project for free. Then, Aiko offers to support Kunan's finances as his loving maid, so Kunan points out that his life sounds like a struggling actor's. Aiko gets into the play as well and wonders if Kunan will abandon her after making it big, so he insincerely promises to marry her one day. As Aiko points out how fake he sounded, Mirika laughs at their closeness, while Zenon feels weirded out. After lunch, Mirika wonders how many projects Kunan has completed with Zenon. Kunan explains that they've created 7 magic tools, written 5 research papers on magic theory, and also wrote a manual on magic experimentation. Then, Kunan reveals that they're working on yet another magic tool, but Zenon tells him that he'll handle all the work from now on. Kunan reminds him that they still need to finish the magic insect box first, but Zenon remains firm. He points out that Kunan is already turning 12, so it's time for him to attempt the exam for the Royal Magic School. Hearing this, Kunan goes silent before saying that he doesn't want to attend the magic school. Zenon wonders why, so Kunan explains that he can already learn the best magic from his beloved teacher. However, Zenon reminds him that he has already completed most of the projects he was working on. Kunan wonders if he's going to get abandoned after doing all of the dirty work, but Zenon points out that he simply cannot teach him how to advance his water magic since he's an earth magician himself. He also says that the magic school could have an incredibly talented water magic teacher, so Kunan shouldn't limit him to just staying with his teacher forever. As Zenon points out all the benefits of studying under a 3 or 4-star water magician, Kunan grows silent. He still tries to protest, but this time, he knows Zenon is right. Seeing him in pain, Mirika rushes to comfort Kunan. She also supports Kunan and encourages him to attend the magic school, saying that she'll do her best to become a woman worthy of being his wife. With Mirika's support, Kunan finally smiles and accepts Zenon's advice. After making his decision, he asks Zenon where the magic school is. When Zenon tells him that the school is 100 miles away from his house, Kunan almost changes his mind again, but luckily, his teacher kicks him out before he can turn back. Afterward, Zenon prepares to return to the tower, and Kunan asks him how he should prepare for his trip to the magic school. He wonders if he should prepare a whole bunch of extra clothes and bedding, but Zenon thinks he's got something much more useful. Kunan wonders if he's referring to his excellent sense of humor, but Zenon lets out a sigh and clarifies that he was actually talking about Kunan's noble goal of creating a new pair of eyes. With this final advice, he leaves in his carriage, leaving Kunan with a renewed motivation. Kunan rushes back into his room and immediately takes his pen out, wondering how he forgot the main reason why he started learning magic in the first place. He takes out a paper and begins writing on it, recalling how many things he has learnt to do without his eyes during his magic journey. Somewhere along the process, he got so used to living blind that he forgot his original desire to create a pair of eyes for himself. This time, he feels determined to see his original goal to the end. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Mirika starts bawling since she doesn't want to let Kunan go. Zenon taunts her for acting so tough when they were with Kunan, so she kicks him in the leg. Then, Mirika thinks about Kunan's goal to create a pair of eyes. If Kunan manages to achieve it, she thinks that he'll gain so much prestige that she'll be left forever behind as a mediocre wife. After thinking about it, she realizes that she wouldn't mind if Kunan remained blind forever. Mirika confesses her insecurities to Dario, admitting that she's a despicable person for thinking this way. Zenon shamelessly interjects and agrees with her, so she shuts him up with another kick. Dario also gets tired of Zenon's snarky remarks, so he warns him to tone it down. He then focuses on Mirika and tells her that she isn't a bad person for having selfish desires. However, he warns her not to give in to her selfish desires or completely sacrifice sacrifice herself for someone else. Instead, he thinks she should find the middle path and do something that will satisfy both her and Kunan. He reassures Mirika that she'll be fine with all the training she has done, so she finally regains some confidence. Watching this, Zenon thinks that Dario is way too soft on Mirika. However, Dario thinks that Zenon is too harsh on Kunan instead, so Zenon reminds him about all the complicated magic theories and spells he has taught Kunan. Dario points out that none of those fancy spells can create new eyes, so Zenon admits that he doesn't know how to do that either. However, he thinks that Kunan has gained a new foundation of magic for him, and holds faith that his student can achieve the impossible. A few days later, Kunan performs some experiments to make new eyes. He creates reflective water bubbles that act like a mirror and multiples those bubbles in the thousands. Although Kunan knows that the eyes of other creatures act similarly to these bubbles, he doesn't feel them working for himself. He then tries a bunch of other bubble and reflective magic variations to see if something else works. After hours of hard work, he collapses on the floor with nothing but failed results. Exhausted, Kunan decides to unwind by taking a nice hot sauna. He invites his older brother, Ixio, to join him. Ixio asks their dad to relax with them as well. Despite it being so late, both men happily agree to join Kunan. Arsene goes a step further and invites Kunan's mom as well, so they all have a great time as a family. Seeing that Kunan is tired enough to take a sauna, Ixio wonders what kind of brutal experiments he was trying out. Kunan explains that he was trying his greatest experiment, so they realize that he's talking about his eyes. Arsene wonders if he has made any progress, but Kunan admits that he's not even close to finishing them. Still, Ixio pats his shoulder and offers his full support, and Arsene does the same for his precious son. The next day, as Kunan has lunch, he feels glad that all his friends and family are so supportive of him, wishing to see all their kind faces. He continues his learning at the Black Tower and at home. One day, Kunan creates a water mirror as a core, before covering it with a fine sand that can detect changes in the mirror's surroundings. With the sensory feedback from the fine sand, Kunan directs the information from the water mirror to flow into his mind. This time, with a working model, he opens his eyes, allowing him to see the world for the first time in his life. Realizing that he has achieved his life's goal, Kunan feels overjoyed and sheds tears of happiness. He walks towards his window to look at the outside world. However, he finds something strange in the window's reflection, so he turns around to look at it. Behind him, Kunan finds a massive shelled creature towering over him.